So we're going to get into a little bit more of a specific question. So do you think a treaty is the best option for the future of KFN and your grandchildren?
Yeah, I think so. If we get a good, like 250 years, I think we'd like to have our people still. But I think the way we're going now, I mean, there won't be any more natives around.
My name is Nicole Rempel, elected chief of the Comox First Nation, and I do not have a traditional name due to colonization and the effects of the Indian Act and subsequent laws. A lot of our tradition and culture was lost, and we're just now working through trying to get that regained in our community.
So my name is Jesse Morin. I'm an archaeologist by trade, and I've been working for Comox First Nation for about 3 years now, dealing with archaeological issues and sorting out some of their historical issues. Comox has a complex cultural history, unlike several other First Nations. They have diverse origins, comprised of 3 separate groups who used to speak their own unique languages, had their unique territories and their unique leaders, and through the modern reserve process have come together under the broader umbrella of the Comox First Nation. So if we look at each of these groups separately, first of all we talk about the Comox group. The Comox people originally from farther north from here, the Salmon River to Quadra Island area, and they were composed of between 10 and 12 separate groups of Comox peoples, of which they were housed within a broader organization called the Whale House. Now, the Whale House is described as a specific structure where the highest ranking people from each of these 5 groups would get together for their winter ceremonials. But I tend to think of the Whale House more so as a metaphor that links these groups as a political unit. And so that's a very strong sort of system of social organization that existed in the past, and is being brought to life in the present here. Right now we are in the Whale House. So now we're in the modern incarnation of the Whale House. And this Whale House brings together the 2 remaining branches of the Comox people, the Pentlatch people, and some additional Liquatat people. So the second major cultural group that comprises the modern Comox First Nation are the Pentlatch people. And the Pentlatch people's home is where we are now. We're in a place called Pentlatch. This is the Pentlatch River, this is the Pentlatch Harbor. And the Pentlatch people were also a Coast Salish speaking group who had linguistically ties to the south, but culturally most of their ties to the north. And typically, when anthropologists describe the Comox and Pentlatch people, they're much more like each other than they are like anybody else. So they comprise their own cultural unit, a world distinct to themselves, with some attributes shared with groups to the south and some shared with groups to the north. But really they comprise a cultural unit distinct to themselves. And so a part of this key history of Comox and why Comox First Nation is here and why we call this place the Comox Valley is that the Comox people relocated here in the middle of the 19th century as a result of some really horrible warfare that was going on farther north. So the third major group that is part of the modern Comox First Nation has ancestry with the Liquatat people, who are Quakwala speaking from the farther north. And specifically, there's a group in Salmon River that voted to amalgamate with the Comox First Nation in, I think, 1940. So sort of a recent transformation, and that was a small population. I think there were only 20 or so surviving members left. And so they amalgamated with Comox, brought that reserve to the modern Comox First Nation, and a few of those surviving members integrated into the broader Comox community. So we have a very diverse community that defies generalization with groups to the north or groups to the south, that's comprised of 3 separate groups, each speaking their own language, each with their own discrete territory, their own chiefs, their own leaders, and their own traits. But now, we're all grouped under this larger umbrella of the modern Comox First Nation.
My name is Melissa QUOCKSISTER. I am a elected council member for the Comox First Nation. I have been on council, this is my 3rd term on council. I've also been working with the nation, rounding out for 10 years now. I am from the Hardy family, who is part of the Sasitla tribe of Comox. My traditional name I was given by Widlady Speck when I was about 12 years old is Unway, which means clouds, and the clouds are the aunties and they take care of all the younger children. I'm most proud to be a Comox person because of the people I descend from, our strong elders and the people of our nation.
Comox person to me is pride in who I am, in my culture, in my community, and in my territory. We are the caretakers of the land and our territory, and we take good pride in that. I think Comox's access to our resources throughout our territory are very limited. We can't harvest clams, cedar, berries, anything without trespassing on someone's property, and that makes it very hard to maintain our culture and teach that to our youth.
In our history, we had unlimited access to our resources, which we looked after and we didn't abuse, and we took what we needed and left the rest for future generations. Today, those resources are not controlled by us, and it is not controlled in the way that supports our traditional stewardship practices.
I think our Comox leadership's relations with local governments are progressing in a good way for the most part. They all seem very eager to connect with Comox, some more than others. I think there's still a little mentality that maybe Comox First Nation was always on a reserve and we weren't throughout our territory. Some of the municipalities have embraced that more than others, and I think I just would like to see that more recognized throughout the entire territory. I think our treaty process has been making really good headway in the last year. I think we've accomplished a lot. I had left the treaty table for a couple of years, and when I came back in this role, some things had changed and some things had been very stalled, and now we're making progress on those stalled items, and I think we're very near a final offer, which is exciting.
We're hoping that things will be moving along sooner than later with the new mandates of the NDP government and the Liberal government in the federal situation. The fact that both the Premier and the Prime Minister have made statements about the UNDRIP and implementing that gives us hope that our treaty process can be looked at in a more productive way, in something that really meets the needs of our nation, where the previous way of doing treaties without acknowledging the UNDRIP or title cases that exist, such as Chilcotin, is not going to meet the needs of any nation, never mind the Comox First Nation.
My hope for the future is that we become self-reliant, prosperous, and culturally strong.
One word that to me best describes the future of Comox First Nation is success. Success because we won't accept anything less.
What are your hopes for the future of your people?
Well, I don't know if there's a future. I hope so. I guess we're trying to make it a future, make a future out of it. So for our children, our grandchildren, and stuff like that. Them are the people that's going to suffer really badly because of all this stuff that's going on here. So.